Hello everybody, my name is Kara and welcome to Pacific Sound, a podcast about music and culture in the Pacific. Join my co-host Dylan and I as we take you on this behind-the-scenes journey and find out what is going on musically in this beautiful part of the world. Hello and welcome to the final episode in this three-part series in which we'll be discussing traditional music from the Solomon Islands. In this episode, prominent traditional musician Natty Dolaiasi will be joining us to talk about his personal mission to document the stories and songs from his tribe. Hi Natty, thanks for coming on our podcast to talk about traditional music in the Solomon Islands. So to kick things off, I thought we'd talk a bit about your background. So where were you born and where did you grow up?
All right, thank you. I was born in a village clinic in Malu, that is in Malete province. And I was born in the island province, on a community or village out in one of the island provinces.
Can you tell me more about the island itself and the people who live there?
Generally, people from Malete, they're different from the rest of the Solomon Islands in a lot of ways, that is. So they're the most hardworking people. Most of them live in the village, and they grow their own food and catch their own fish and all sort of things that is happening on the island of Malete, that is.
So Natty, has music always been a big part of your life? Like, were your parents playing music to you when you were young, or did you have a lot of influence from your family or extended family?
I have families who actually play music. My cousins, my uncles, they all play music. So, and I was growing up when music, it's like you're hungry to listen to music because there's only one radio station in the country at that time. So listening to music and having a family that most of them play music, it's like eye-opener for myself as a local kid and growing up in a community and stuff like that.
Yeah, sounds like you had a lot of influence growing up. So what genre of music did you play when you first started out?
I started by singing cultural songs and then dancing at the same time, because that is what my family is known for. So, yeah.
Thanks for listening to Pacific Sound. We've had the pleasure of speaking with Natty Dolaiasi from the Solomon Islands. Following on before, I'd like to get Natty back to talk about his journey so far to preserve traditional music and what message he's trying to get out there, particularly to the younger generation. So Natty, at what point did you decide to shift away from playing, contemporary music and focus more on singing and writing traditional music?
I think I was influenced way back in 1995 when I met up with this guy, Anthony Copping, who is the producer for Silver Pacific and Last Voices from Heaven. Yeah, so that's when I actually followed him around, recording stuff from the islands, and then I had a message in the back of my mind. This is the time I should rise up and not recording stuff, but performing practically, doing the stuff, and then showing or exposing it out into the world and the younger generation who are not getting or not born during this time that the music is still alive. But it's so lucky that I was part of that project, and then I'm able to archive and learn some of the things that I didn't have in my what I've learned. So it happens way back in 1995.
Yeah, nice. Now, I know that whenever you travel in the Solomons, you always take a recorder with you, or you write down and try and document traditional songs and stories.
Yes. So what happened is I usually travel across the outlying islands of the Solomon Islands. I have families, I have places where I usually go to, because I was raised with people, my friends, my families from different island provinces. So what happened is when I go to the village, see the elder sitting right in the middle of his house, walk up to him and they said, can I ask you a question? Can you sing something for me, or can you tell me a story? So that is when I'm able to collect different stories and songs from different island provinces.
And with your own sort of cultural music and your own story of your own tribe, how was that passed on to you? I know you've mentioned before that your father and grandfather passed it on. That was just through them teaching you?
Interesting thing is, because I think I have their DNA in me. So most of these things I remember. That is the most unbelievable thing that happened to me there. I remember every single thing that my ancestors, because they died before I was actually born. So I actually remember every single thing from the tribal thing, from the tribal songs, tribal stories, and all sort of things. I'm so fortunate, but I have a memory that remembers everything that happens in my tribe, or what happens with my forefathers and my ancestors. That is.
Yeah, it's like a gift that you were given to sort of carry on your tribe's story.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
You know, Dylan and I have been discussing in this podcast, traditional music in different parts of the world, and we were sort of discussing how much of it has been lost over time in certain areas. We were just sort of wondering how much of your own tribe story do you think has been lost over time?
I think with what happened with civilization, I'm not saying anything bad about Christianity, that is. These influences had the most impact to what happened to our tribal songs, stories, and the practice, most of the practice that we have, especially the whole of the country, that is, the whole of Solomon Islands. And even my tribal people, most of them had moved or migrated into the city and forget about the village life. And then they all have been now living in Honiara, that is in the city, and forget all about what's happening back in the island villages.
Yeah, it's like with my English heritage, Natty. You know, within the church, the fiddle played a big part in what was known as the village band at the time. And, once the organ came in, the village bands were dismissed from the churches and their music became despised, so to speak. So as a result, the bands broke up and the fiddle started to become obsolete. So to me, this feels similar to what Christianity did to the traditional instruments of the Solomon Islands, as you mentioned.
It is. And the other thing is, when you're telling stories, the traditional way is these stories have songs in it. So you have to tell a story and then sing a song. But nowadays, you tell a story and then sing a chorus instead.
Yeah, in the Western Province, it's very similar in that a lot of our songs are sung as hymns now, and that was introduced by Christianity and the missionaries that came out there.
Yes.
So we've already sort of touched a bit on it. I know that you're planning to sort of archive your stories and stuff, but you're also planning to pass it on to the younger generation of where you're from. And we just wanted to know how you sort of plan to do that.
All right. So currently, I'm having drum classes and sharing songs with communities around here, especially in Honiara. But with my own tribal people, I usually go back and we just have a talk and share, telling them that this is what we have. But the good thing about my tribe is everything stays with the DNA you're born with. So you're not losing anything unless you want to run away from it.
It's passed on via the bloodline.
It is. The other thing is, when now I'm living in the city, what I'm trying to do here is trying to teach not my own tribe. I'm teaching children that are willing to learn. So I have been having classes around the communities, going see different communities and different children to teach them the basic of what we have here in the Solomon Islands, getting the examples from my tribal songs and stories.
And what's been the reaction from the kids? I know that I've seen a few videos on social media and I've heard stories that the kids love it, but how do you sort of perceive it?
I think over these years they haven't seen someone like me doing this. And for such a person out of nowhere walks up and said, "Hey, let me teach you something you need to know." So all these children just I find it eager to learn. That helps me to get going. I mean, keep going, teaching, and then telling stories and stuff like that. Yeah.
So, Natty, are you currently recording any music? I hear you might have an album in the works.
Yes, yes. So currently, I'm working on an album. This album is called C4. C4 it's my journey. It's my journey where I migrated, because I migrated across Malacca. So there's a migration that happens with my ancestors. So I get all the information and the stories and the songs, and I'm just gonna tell the story in this album. Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So I've seen that you tour around a bit, but obviously not at the moment. So what countries have you been to, and where do you plan on going next after the whole COVID-19 pandemic's sort of over with?
Yes, I have my current status for traveling after this COVID. I have 7 different places to go to. So yeah, I'll be on the cruise boat, the peace boat, probably early January if things are cleared. Probably straight up to Tokyo, and then probably back to Taiwan again. And then I'm planning to go to Ethno, India, in probably mid-June next year. And then I have a collaboration to go to Indonesia for the Bali Spirit Festival that is being cancelled for this year. I have a lot of places that I want to go to and share my music, yeah.
Yeah, nice. You've got a lot planned for the future. Is there anything else apart from your album that you're working on?
Yes. So currently I'm working with a number of youth around the communities from here in Honiara especially. And what we do, I'm just getting different children from different island provinces and then sharing what they have in their island province, so that this will encourage them to be able to go back to their parents, probably grandparents, or their community, and ask if they still have more of what's left or with what they have in their different island provinces. So I'm currently working on that with the youths here in Honiara, because there's no restriction in Honiara. So we just stay here and we'll do that. Probably this will go until December, probably, yeah.
That's an excellent project you're working on there, Natty. Just finally, do you have any words of advice for our listeners or anyone out there who's thinking about going down the path you are and preserving their traditional stories and their songs?
I think what I'm going to say here is there's life with your identity, where you come from. It will always remind you that if you know something about where you come from, stories, songs, or even information about where you come from, it's so important in this era of life. You will need it. If you're thinking of going back to where you're from, this is the way forward. Know something about where you come from and go into the future with that.
Thank you so much, Natty. Wise words. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
This concludes this podcast series on traditional music in the Solomon Islands. If you want to know more about who we are or listen to any of our podcasts, go to www.pacificsoundpodcast.com. We're also always on the lookout for new music and stories from around the Pacific, so please feel free to send us an email via the contact page.